Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Hello again, and welcome to Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast. I am your host, John Johnson, and on this particular podcast episode, I want to talk something about forgiveness. Forgiveness in the context of how we relate to other people. And this isn't just a biblical thing. You know, a lot of people talk about forgiveness on Sundays, and they read it in the Bible and all the values there. But I want to talk about it from the standpoint of being in relationship to other people and how forgiveness works for you. Now, this isn't just a biblical concept, but it's the idea that when you are carrying these grudges, when you are carrying something inside of you that is preventing you from being close to someone, and maybe even yourself, how it does damage. And being able to let things like that go, free you up to experience your life in the way you want to experience it. I can relate to it from having had an ex-relationship, somebody who I thought well of, and had tried to be in communication about a number of things, just as one would do. You know, you call and say, "Hi, how are you doing?" And feeling slighted. Now, what happened is I was still attached in some ways to what I liked about that person, and knowing that the relationship was over with, but there was still aspects about that person that I still wanted to experience. And being that that's what I wanted, and she didn't want to do that. They didn't want to give that in return, and or how I was operating was probably from the fantasy that I could still have a friendship with this person, and I was being rejected. Well, over a period of time, it did not get better. I had extended myself many times to have conversations, just to chit-chat, and it seemed like there was no responding on that level. Again, just to be friends. There was nothing romantic behind this. And I had to ask myself, honestly, what were my intentions? How might I have been being perceived? And I wanted to bury the hatchet. I wanted to get that all cleared up. Well, I never got past the thought process in that, so I never got that to happen. But I carried a lot of resentment towards that person. And what I had to learn to do is to accept that where it is in life for me at this time, and to want to move on. So there was, in my perception, there had to be a forgiveness. I had to show empathy, because I really don't know what was going on the other side. This person could have had many, many, many things going on, and I was not privy to. But in order to put this aside for me and to move on, I decided that I would have empathy for that person, saying that they must have a lot going on, and also have empathy for myself, saying that it is okay that I wanted to try to work something out, and now to move on is to have to accept that I can't change what's happening at the moment. So there's some acceptance on my part that had to happen. But the forgiveness part is related to, in this case, it's related to how I perceive the other person as having slighted me and not accepting my invitation to have a conversation, however it may be. And while it was important for me to want to continue that dialogue, being rejected made me feel like I was not valuable, or at least I perceived it as rejection, that I wasn't valuable. And that's not what I really wanted to do. I wanted to just be able to have a conversation and move on. Now, never having heard from this other person, I really don't know what's going on with them. And you may have experienced the same thing in your life for lots of reasons, and probably too numerous for me to just mention. But if you've experienced that, and trying to learn how to let go and forgive, because the forgiveness part of this relates to accepting yourself for wanting to have a different outcome, but not being able to make that happen. Forgiving whatever was happening with that other person and how they were operating. They may not know themselves well enough to have explained to you what's going on with them. See, so this is the philosophy that I'm trying to share with you, and to help you let go of things that you can't control and to move on. And relationships oftentimes give us this opportunity more than we realize, because maybe we don't see it. But what I had to see operating here was partly my codependence. I had to learn how to be more forgiving. I had to employ my empathy skills, not only for them, but for myself, so that I can break free of the trappings that were going on here. And by opening my mind up to the other things that are out there to experience in life, I did myself a huge favor, because you're going to get many opportunities in life to practice this. If you've sort of begun to master this, then great for you. If this is the first time you've heard of something like this, or sort of chipping away at this, understand it's a process. And as many people as there are in life, there's that number of opportunities to have things to come up, to face them, to move beyond them. And for you to have to be in that place, hold yourself in high regard for facing up to it, and do the best that you can. Do some reading, do some meditating, if that's your choice. Listen to some music. Get yourself in a good space. But the whole idea is to approach this from the aspect that it's going to be a good outcome for you, because you want to put that spin on it. And for another part of this, the forgiveness thing, here's something I want to talk about. Now, that example was forgiveness for somebody who's not in my life. I want to talk about an example of forgiveness when somebody is in your life. You have day-to-day dealings with this person, and it's important, as I've always said, communication is really the key here, about sharing your feelings, picking a good time, and obviously a good spot, a neutral place, to have the discussion about what you're feeling. And try to have a clear mind as to this, because when you're getting into a conversation that can be as heavy as this could be, you want to be able to be clear. So what's necessary about this, especially in forgiving somebody that you were in daily operations with, is that until that happens, you have that fence that's between you and that person. And you can't really experience the joy of being with that partner, that friend, that whomever, when you have this conflict that's happening between you. And it may be something that they did to you. It could be whether intentional or unintentional. Obviously the result is how it lands on you is the same. But it's about understanding the power of forgiveness and letting things go and being able to move past it. Many people approach forgiveness from the perspective of a religious background. And I feel that it's very empowering to yourself to extend that, because when you hang on to that feeling of anger and resentment, again, what it does to you and your body can be devastating. I know people that have gone years and years of not talking to friends and family because they refuse to forgive something. Oftentimes, these things happen many years ago. And sometimes it's even a rumor. They're not even clear about it. But when you don't talk to somebody about what's going on, how are they going to address it? So in these cases, when you have access to someone, be willing to address it. Have the courage step up, speak your piece. You're not going to get it perfect. When you start these conversations, you don't necessarily have all the facts, and that's why you're having a dialogue. That's why you want to be open to the conversation. And sometimes being honest is really hard for some people, but get through it the best way you can. And you leave yourself open to whatever comes. But I think generally it's going to be a good outcome for you and that other person. But hopefully you get the idea of how forgiveness is freeing for you and that you can move on in life. And we'll be right back after this.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hi there, welcome back. I'm John Johnson, and this is Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast, and I'm talking about forgiveness. Before the break, I sort of outlined a few things about forgiveness and the whys, and I'm going to talk about how. When you think of a person, and you've got these issues that just seem to be coming up, and they give you some anxiety on the inside, there are probably a lot of instances where these things can happen. So here's what you do. Take out some paper or use your smartphone. You can dictate into it or however you make your lists and write down these things because I want you to keep track of what it is you're doing here. So you write down these things and there are the individuals and the things that bother you about them and what it is. What do you think forgiveness is? What it is to you? And compare it to some of the things that I'd outlined in the earlier part of this particular episode, and compare it to that. What are you going to do? What do you want to have happen? What I want for you is to be able to get past this, whatever it is that's bothering you. And by writing down, it helps you focus on what the issues are, the individuals that we're relating to in particular, and by there, you can begin your blueprint to forgiveness. I think reading something empowering helps put you in a good state of mind because the idea behind this isn't necessarily to create more anxiety for you. It's to help resolve the problem. And you can take this on. This isn't necessarily something you have to go to a therapist to do. This is something that you can take on, and it's reasonable to have a good outcome. And I think it's important because practicing this helps you learn how to resolve things on your own. And you don't have to take someone else's advice. Learn to listen to your inner self and to work on some of these things. So like I said, you write these things down and the individuals that you have issues with, have some idea of what forgiveness is to you so that you know what outcome you want, and begin the process. Call the person, text them, however it is, and say you want to have a communication with them. If putting it in a letter is best for you, great. Try that approach. Some people like to talk face-to-face. I'm a person that likes to talk face-to-face because it really helps me because I read body language, and that favors my style of communication. Some people are intimidated facing these sorts of things. If it's sort of your first time doing this, then maybe you work better on the phone because and maybe because you feel safer that way. But pick something that works for you so that you can begin the communication and make it happen for yourself. And I think you have, consider something that when you're in communication with somebody, you're bringing up a subject that could have been put away for them or something that they caught unaware. People have to have time to respond. They have to have time to take it in, try to grasp what it is you're talking about, and give them some time to respond. It may happen in the next 5 minutes. It may take a week, but that's part of the dynamic here. But you're beginning a process, and learn to do that with people you've been out of communication with. You can do it with, your siblings, your significant other. As I had said, in this particular instance, we're doing it with people that we're normally in communication with. In the earlier part of this podcast, I talked about it from a standpoint of people that you may be disconnected from. So the idea of communicating with them by email, text message, phone, however it works for you, this definitely applies. But when you have somebody who you're interacting with day to day, it's more important that you work on this now. Let's move forward on this, because the longer you hang on to this, the friction, the breakdown of communication it's happening on a daily basis. It's ongoing, and we want to put that away. So after having done that, then if you haven't gotten a response, revisit it. Ask them for some feedback on your communication and see what happens. Sometimes it's for a person that's receiving your attempt to communicate with them. And again, you're working on the forgiveness part. For somebody to receive that communication, it sort of backs them on their heels, and they may not be very good. They may not be very experienced in dealing with this sort of thing. So it could be a first time out for them. But ultimately, you want to communicate to them that you want a resolution, that this is all for the good. This isn't about trying to break up relationships or something like that. Remember, we're working on forgiveness, because this puts you in a better spot. And overall, when you give this gift to yourself about being able to face these kinds of things, you're so much better off in life. Because there are a lot of people that are walking around that have not tried to do this. They don't want any part of it, and they walk around miserable. And that's not what I would want for you. Okay? So thank you for taking that on. And I'm going to take another short break, and we'll be right back.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Hello, and welcome back to Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast. Again, I'm your host, John Johnson. You ever think about, in your relationship, you're having with someone, and invariably the question comes out, what do you want? Well, I can tell you that that's probably one of those wide open questions, whether you're in a relationship or you're dating or first starting to date, you begin to ask those questions of what do you want? That can be a very scary thought, because how many people actually know what they want? And because here's what happens with a question like that. When somebody says it to me, and I'm just putting myself out there as an example of how this lands. When somebody says, what do you want? It's a wide open thing. And then the person that's asking it, they're sort of they're not trying to necessarily put you on the spot, but it's sort of a question that gets asked because they want to know what you want. And then you're in this place of trying to answer this in a real clever way, something you want it to make sense, so you want it to be reasonable. But then I know it feels like you're being put on the spot and you're trying to figure out, okay, in what context are we talking about? Is this a long-term relationship? Do we want to have sex? What am I trying to what am I trying to answer with this question? Because invariably there's going to be a recall as to this conversation and what plays out. I mean, if you just want to hang out and just be fun and be friends, when a person is asking you that and they want more of a commitment, well, they're not going to let you off the hook with just that answer that seems to be right on the surface, because that's not deep enough. That's not bold enough. That's not enough commitment. And that can be very scary to you when you feel like, okay, I'm not going to measure up because this person is really asking these hardy questions. How do you get around? How do you navigate that kind of conversation? Well, it's obviously going to be one of those negotiations. It's going to go back and forth. You're going to get into the conversation. You're going to figure out that we're going to talk about some meat and potatoes issues. What kind of time are we going to spend together? What kinds of things we're going to do? We're not just going to hang out. We're going to establish a routine, a pattern. Now, obviously, that can be very scary. Because if you're used to having your options open, then you probably are going to feel like you're being constrained. And it's the nature of it. Yes, there are limits that are going to be placed on you, and you're going to have to invest in it. But it's also an opportunity for you, who's being asked the question, to put out there what you want. And you get to have expectations with that. So you're not just operating from a deficit. You're not just trying to please the other person, but you also get to say what it is you want. And by doing that, you're making a choice to think about how you want this to go for you. If you're a guy, and I'm just stereotyping things here. Again, this is just for illustration. If you're a guy and the commitment thing sort of kind of makes you squirm a little bit because you're afraid of messing things up, or maybe you don't have a lot of esteem, and you've got a woman who is sort of approaching this because she wants a little more permanence, a little more knowing what's going to happen from day to day, then answering that question is going to be really tough. Because you may have never really thought about it from the standpoint of you're going to have to be more responsible and more accountable. And that's good. These things are good. It's not that you can't do these things, but it's having accountability to anything. I mean, it's something we generally volunteer for, but having accountability can be scary, because I think we're always afraid of failure. And that's what's underneath this fear of, or the reluctance to state what it is you want, because you feel like you're going to fail at something, or maybe you're going to be found out that you're not that good at doing something. So you're going to have to learn. You're going to have to learn how to be responsible and to be accountable. The stakes are going to be pretty high for a person like yourself. So you're going to be forced to be honest and communicate who you are. And this is something that happens to a lot of times with guys who are dating a woman that's out of their league, is they get they get called on it. And they want to date an attractive woman, or a woman who has a lot going on. And if the guy's just a player, then he's going to be found out. Or let's turn the tables on this. Let's say there's a guy that's trying to find out from a woman what it is that she's up to, because this certainly happens. this is just as viable as what happens, the other opposite sex, is that you find a woman who's fairly interesting to a lot of people, and being committed to one guy is not necessarily something that she wants to do, because you may get a lot of avoidance maneuvers. She doesn't return the phone calls, doesn't want to really commit to anything, and and let me add something. Sometimes when these things happen, it's not always an avoidance maneuver. It's not always about people trying to be dishonest. Some people just have a lot of anxiety around the subject of, number one, knowing what they want, being able to ask for it and receive it, because they may just have issues with having been around people who have never been very responsible or very reliable. So, knowing what you can have and what's reasonable sometimes is just out there, and it takes a lot of work to get to that place where you're on the same page with someone. So it takes a little bit of time. It could take years, depending upon where you are in life. You could be learning that you have to get over some old issues. But back to the story of being able to, what do you want, and being asked and being able to answer those questions. It does require thought, and it does require being accountable and asking yourself what you're capable of. That's a very important question, because you shouldn't really expect more from someone else than you're really willing to give, because on that basis, that's how you keep it equal. Relationships are an investment. And if you're investing in somebody over the long haul, there's going to be imbalances. It's never just 50-50. It's, if one is pushing and the other one is pulling, as long as you're going the same direction, you'll be okay. One stumbles, you help them up, but you're doing it as a team. And that's a very, very valuable thing to be able to rely on, is to have somebody in your corner. Somebody who's willing to understand, somebody who's willing to be there for you, and to be able to invest in that. That's where the beauty of learning about yourself and having expectations, planning things, enjoying those things, and even dealing with the difficult things that happen, but having that companion. If you're not quite at that level, then you expect that, you'll wait till you find somebody who's at the level where you're at. You'll just tend to, fall to wherever you are. Or if you're on the other side of that, climb to where there are people that are like-minded. But use your voice, your internal voice even. Let it speak to you. Be honest with yourself, and be willing to be open to the people that you're in communication with. Be honest to them. You'll save yourself a lot of heartache in the long run. On this topic of forgiveness and what do you want, invariably you come up to, you face yourself, and by communicating with yourself about who you are, and then being able to share that with another individual, being clear, you can begin to shape your life, or continue to shape your life in a way that you want it to go, and in the relationships that you have. And that's a wonderful thing. You start from wherever you're at. It's not necessarily about comparing you to the person next to you. This is a personal relationship for yourself, and encouraging you to move forward. Learn to be courageous, be bold in your own life, and you will have many rewards. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast, and I'm your host, John Johnson. Thank you for listening.